May 30th, 1964. At the Indianapolis 500, the clear morning sky suddenly turned orange with fire. A collision in the first corner transformed the entire racetrack into an inferno. Two drivers fell. Flames spread across the asphalt. Steel frames glowed red, and thick black smoke covered the grandstands. In that moment, the entire world of American racing seemed to hold its breath. Amid the chaos, buried beneath the ashes, was a secret few knew: an engine built by Ford, the result of a top-secret project that had been years in the making. An engine born from betrayal, pride, and blood. It was called the Ford 255 Indy DOHC V8, a machine that once divided Detroit and nearly destroyed the very people who created it. But how could a car with an American heart be born from a British chassis, Italian carburetors, and a rebel engineer from Ford? In the early 1960s, the Indianapolis 500 was no longer a symbol of speed, but a museum of the past. Every car looked the same: long bodies, front-mounted engines, and old steel frames. At the center of that world stood one name: Offenhauser, or Offie. A machine born in the 1920s that had ruled with absolute dominance for more than 15 consecutive seasons. From 1950 to 1962, 416 out of 429 cars in the Indy 500 qualifiers used Offie engines. Every time its 2.7-liter four-cylinder roared to life, it sounded like pure authority, a power no team dared to challenge. Founder Fred Offenhauser was considered the godfather of the racetrack, and engineers called it the empire that could never fall. This was a world of repetition. Everyone copied the same formula, the same roadster design. But in Dearborn, Michigan, one man refused to stand still. Don Frey, Ford's young vice president, didn't see greatness in the Offenhauser empire. He saw complacency. He wanted Ford to reach a new pinnacle, not through advertising, but through victory on America's toughest racetrack. Frey assembled a secret group, operating like a skunk works, a place where bold minds could innovate freely without being bound by corporate rules. Leading the effort was Bill Gay, head of Ford's advanced engine department, along with consultant Mario Fornieri and Phil Remington, the brilliant Shelby Cobra engineer obsessed with shaving every last pound of weight. Their plan was audacious: shrink the Fairlane 5.8 down to just 255 cubic inches, equip it with dual overhead camshafts, and make it scream to 8,000 revolutions per minute. Other engineers laughed, giving the project a grim nickname, Project Suicide. But to Frey, it was a mission. He believed that if they succeeded, Ford wouldn't just defeat Offenhauser, it would forever change the face of American racing. In 1962, amid the roaring stands of Daytona, a young American driver named Dan Gurney caught the world's attention. His victory at the Daytona Continental brought him fame and forged a fateful connection with Ford. Gurney was more than a driver, he was a visionary, one who understood that speed came not only from power, but from engineering intelligence. It was Gurney who introduced Colin Chapman, the genius founder of Lotus, to America. Chapman, who had built Europe's lightest and fastest Formula One cars, was initially uninterested in Indianapolis. But when Gurney invited him to witness the race that year, everything changed. From the grandstands, Chapman watched the massive, heavy front-engine American roadsters. Like oxen pulling carts in the jet age, he later remarked. On the flight from Indianapolis to Monaco, he couldn't stop talking about the opportunity. We can win if we bring European ingenuity and American muscle to the same track. When he returned, Chapman joined forces with Don Frey and Bill Gay, and thus a strange alliance was born. Ford, Lotus, Britain, and America united with a single goal: to shatter the Offenhauser empire that had ruled for decades. The Double Cross project officially began. True to its name, it was meant to cross, to break limits, challenge tradition, and pray that nothing would explode. Bill Gay and his team of engineers didn't start from zero. They chose the Ford Fairlane V8 as their foundation, the smallest and lightest engine in Ford's lineup at the time, with a displacement of only 221 cubic inches, later increased to 260 cubic inches for the AC Cobra. It was the perfect base to downsize to 255 cubic inches, the limit set by Indy 500 regulations. In the first phase, they tested the standard pushrod configuration, achieving about 260 horsepower, not enough to threaten Offenhauser. So Ford purchased a genuine Offie engine, mounted it on the test bench, and dissected every part. What they discovered was surprising. Offie didn't dominate because of peak horsepower, but because of its strong mid-range torque, which gave it quicker corner exits. From that insight, Ford shifted focus, prioritizing acceleration efficiency rather than pure top-end power. The second phase began, creating an all-aluminum 255 cubic inch V8, incredibly light at just 72 pounds for the block, with each cylinder head weighing less than 16 pounds. When tested for 24 continuous hours at maximum RPM, the engine survived, something few believed possible. But just as excitement grew, another problem appeared. The Weber 46mm carburetors were too small, choking airflow at high RPM. And when Weber's engineers refused to make larger ones, Bill Gay wouldn't take no for an answer. He flew straight to Italy to personally convince Weber's chief engineer to build a few special 58mm carburetors, prototypes that had never been used on any race car before. When Gay returned to America, the Ford team mounted them onto the 255 cubic inch V8, and the results stunned everyone. The engine roared like a metallic beast, producing 460 horsepower at 6,800 revolutions per minute, running 24 hours straight at full throttle without failure. At that moment, they knew Ford had created a machine capable of challenging the mighty Offenhauser empire. Yet beneath the glory lay a ticking time bomb. During testing at Daytona, engineers discovered a resonance in the valve springs that caused violent valve flutter at certain RPM ranges. A single failure during the race could destroy everything. One engine even snapped a valve right after testing. Colin Chapman grew nervous, while Don Frey called it the price of revolution. But when the engine ran smoothly, the whole team went silent, because when it worked, it truly felt like riding a rocket. When the 1963 Indianapolis 500 season arrived, spectators were used to seeing big, heavy, front-engine roadsters until the Lotus 29 appeared. Compact, low-slung, and mid-engined, the car Colin Chapman and Dan Gurney brought to America left everyone stunned. Under the rear cover sat the Ford 255 V8, compact, powerful, and utterly different from anything else on the track. Throughout qualifying, Scottish driver Jim Clark left the other teams bewildered. His Lotus Ford was lighter, more fuel-efficient, and cornered so well it seemed to glide across the pavement. When the race began, Lotus was not only fast, but also strategic. Fewer pit stops, smarter pacing. However, victory isn't just about speed, it's about people. The Lotus pit crew had never experienced the fast-paced American style, where every second determined fate. One slip, one dropped wheel, one delayed mount, and victory was gone. In the end, Jim Clark finished second, just behind A.J. Foyt, who remained loyal to his traditional Offenhauser Roadster. After this impressive result, Ford entered the 1964 season with unshakable confidence that glory was within reach. This time, they didn't just improve the car, they reinvented the engine itself, the Ford 255 DOHC V8, a masterpiece of engineering spinning up to 8,000 revolutions per minute, producing more than 425 horsepower and weighing only about 360 pounds. It was a perfect machine, at least on paper. On May 30th, 1964, the Indianapolis sky was clear as usual. 7 Ford-powered cars lined up, led by Bobby Marshman, Jim Clark, and Eddie Sachs. But after only a few laps, hell broke loose. Dave McDonald's car lost control, crashed into the wall, and exploded. Eddie Sachs couldn't avoid the inferno and collided head-on. Both drivers were killed, and the entire racetrack was engulfed in thick black smoke. Immediately, Colin Chapman was blamed. Many claimed the Lotus chassis was too thin, the Ford engine ran too hot, and that this Anglo-American alliance was a disaster. The entire program seemed to collapse in a single day. But when Ford's engineers examined the remains of Bobby Marshman's car, which had been leading before retiring due to an oil leak, they discovered the engine was still intact. It was the Dunlop tires, not the engine, that caused the loss of control. The result was kept secret. Ford stayed silent before the press, but inside, quiet anger was building. Don Frey, Bill Gay, and Chapman all knew. Next year, they would return, not just to win, but to prove that Ford would never bow to tragedy. The result was one of the most sophisticated and advanced engines ever built in racing history. The Ford 255 dual overhead cam V8. Instead of continuing with the traditional pushrod layout, the engineers adopted 4 valves per cylinder, dual overhead camshafts, and a pent-roof combustion chamber, a design that allowed intake and exhaust flow to move almost straight through, minimizing energy loss. The engine was made entirely from solid aluminum, weighed just 406 pounds, and produced 425 horsepower at 8,000 revolutions per minute. What amazed engineers the most was how Ford perfected the cylinder heads. Instead of traditional machining, they used EDM, electrical discharge machining, a process that cuts metal using electrical arcs. In 1964, that was nearly science fiction. The combustion chambers were machined to tolerances under 3/16 of an inch, so precise that even Ferrari and Maserati engineers were astonished. Even more interestingly, when they installed the engine into the chassis, Ford discovered the exhaust headers interfered with the rear suspension. Instead of redesigning the frame, they did the unthinkable. They flipped the entire setup, placing the exhausts on top and the intakes below. This not only solved the fitment issue, but also straightened the airflow path, significantly improving efficiency. With 0.440-inch valve lift, 87-degree valve overlap, and valve springs exerting up to 360 pounds when open, this engine became a symbol of daring innovation. Popular mechanics called it a miracle of the modern mechanical age, and they gave it a new name, Phoenix, the bird reborn from the ashes. In 1965, Ford not only brought Lotus back to Indianapolis, but built an entire operational infrastructure around it. They hired Louis Meyer, the legend behind the original Offenhauser engine, to oversee Ford's engine maintenance and distribution. Ford even established a dedicated technical center at Indianapolis, where only Ford engineers were allowed to touch the engines. No outside hands were permitted to make adjustments. When race day came, Ford arrived in force. 68 cars entered, 45 of them mid-engined, and 24 powered by Ford's DOHC V8. On pole position was Jim Clark, who had retired the previous year. He returned, calm, focused, and determined. From the moment the race began, Clark made the difference clear. The Lotus 38 was lighter, more fuel-efficient, and cornered so quickly that the old roadsters seemed trapped in another era. The pit crew, borrowed from NASCAR's Wood Brothers, was hand-picked by Ford. They completed tire changes in under 20 seconds, faster than any other team at Indy. Clark led 190 of the 200 laps, losing the lead only during pit stops. When he crossed the finish line first, the crowd erupted. For the first time in 45 years, a foreign driver had won the Indianapolis 500, and more importantly, Ford had toppled the Offenhauser empire, not by luck, but by intellect. In the years that followed, the engine ruled the Indianapolis 500 like an uncrowned king, winning in 1965, 1966, 1967, 1969, 1970, 1971, and 1977. Colin Chapman once said, "That engine runs as smooth as a turbine, yet hits like thunder." Indeed, though hundreds of race engines have been built since, few have ever matched its balance of lightness, strength, and precision. By the early 1970s, Ford handed the entire program to A.J. Foyt, one of America's greatest racing legends. Under his direction, the engine was renamed the Foyt V8, but its heart remained Ford. It continued to capture glorious victories, even making its way into dragsters, where it earned the NHRA's Best Engineered Car Award. It reignited the creative spirit of an entire generation of American engineers, people who dared to step out of their comfort zone and challenge the impossible. And within every revolution of the Phoenix, you can still hear echoes of the past: power, pride, and blood. If Eddie Sachs hadn't fallen, would Ford have achieved that victory? If Chapman hadn't taken the risk, would the mid-engine revolution ever have happened? Share your thoughts. Was the triumph of the Ford 255 the pinnacle of human ingenuity, or proof of the price we pay for ambition? Leave a comment below. I read every word, every memory you share, and don't forget to subscribe so we can keep uncovering more shocking truths behind the machines that forever changed the world of engineering. See you in the next video.